गिरिवरदारी यशोदानंदन व्रजजन रंजन यशोदानंदन व्रजजन रंजन यमुना तीरा वनचारी यमुना तीरा वनचारी तेरा माधवा कुंज बिहारी हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे जय प्रभुपादा जय प्रभुपादा शील प्रभुपादा Jai Vishnupada Paramahamsa Prajakta Stuti Sudhashi Matthanga Sri Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. ISKCON Sanstha का जय श्रील प्रभुपाद की जय जय विष्णुपाद परमहंस प्रवृत्त स्तुत सदा श्रीमद् भक्ति सिद्धांत सरस्वती गोस्वामी महाराज प्रभुपाद की जय जय विष्णुपाद श्री गौर किशोर दास स्वामी महाराज की जय जय विष्णुपाद सच्चिदानंद श्री भक्ति विनोद ठाकुर की जय जय विष्णुपाद वैष्णव सार्वभौम श्री जगन्नाथ दास स्वामी महाराज की जय जय श्री रूप सनातन भट्ट रमन श्री जी गोपाल भट्टदास अविनाश गोस्वामी प्रभु की जय नमोचर्य श्री हरिदास ठाकुर की जय प्रेम से को श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री द्वैत दादा शिव सारी गौर भक्त वृंद की जय श्री श्री राधा कृष्ण गोपकुंज श्याम कुंड राधा कुंड गिरिगोवर्धन की जय श्री श्री गौरांगी बैंगलोर ईश्वर भगवान की जय श्री मायपुर धाम की जय श्री वृंदावन धाम की जय गंगा की जय यमुना माई की जय भक्ति देव की जय तुलसी देवी की जय अनंत कोटि वैष्णव की जय श्री हरिनाम संकीर्तन की जय ग्रंथराज श्रीमद् भागवतम की जय इस्कॉन वर्तमान गुरुवंत की जय समावेद भक्ति जय गौरव परिमानंदे Hari Hari Bol. All glories to the assembled Lord. All glories to the assembled Lord. All glories to the assembled Lord. All glories to Shri Guru and Shri Gauranga. All glories to Shri Prabhupada. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam. Devim Saraswati Vyasam Tato Jayamudihayet. Ashtaprayeshu Patreshu Nityam Bhagavata Shevaya. Bhagavati Uttama Sloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtihi. Hare Krishna, welcome you all to this Saturday morning Srimad Bhagavatam summary study. Today we are discussing from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, chapter 16, text 19 to text 37. I will just read one verse and then we start text number 19. Tarantitihi anchasa mrityam nivrittaya tat anugrahat yoginah sabbhavan kimasvid anukriyeta yat parehi. Translation The translation says, mystics and transcendentalists, by the mercy of the Lord, cross beyond nations by seizing all material desires. It is not possible, therefore, that the Supreme Lord can be favored by others. Om Abhyati Miratis, Jnananjana Shalake, Chakshurmantamira Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya, Prabhu Nityananda, Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktavinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Muham Karodvacharam Bhangam Nangedi Patamaham Bande Shri Guru Devatana Paramanama Shri Chaitanya Mishra. So here we see this chapter Jaya and Vijaya cursed by the sages. In the previous speaker, I suppose, would have covered up to sloka number 18, wherein we find that the Kumaras are glorifying the Supreme Personality of Godhead with these wonderful prayers. So here we start with Sloka 19. It says that uh, the yogis, there are different types of yogis, that is karma yogis, jnana yogis, dhyana yogis, and bhakti yogis. So these karma yogis, normally, they seek favor from the demigods. Then these jnana yogis, they actually want to become one with the Lord. They want to become God. Then the dhyana yogis are one who meditate on the form of the Lord, which is a partial expansion of the personality of Godhead, situated in the heart as Paramatma. And ultimately, they also want to become one with Him. But the bhaktas or the devotees of the Lord, they will practice what is called bhakti yoga, and they want to associate with the Lord eternally. The Lord is eternal, and the devotees are also eternal, and the devotional process of devotional service, which connects the Lord and the devotee, is also eternal. So the Lord is not, therefore, the Lord does not require another favor. Lord, one of the names of the Lord is called Asamodva. That is, there is no one greater than the Lord or equal to the Lord. That is why it's called Asamodva. So the Lord does not require the favor of anyone, but everyone requires the mercy, favor, and mercy of the Lord for successfully understanding the goal of human life. So purpose of human life is to attain self-realization. That is, understand who we are, who is God, what is our relationship with us and God, and what is our constitutional position. That is what the purpose of human life is for which we need the association of, we need the mercy of the Lord and His devotees. So we go now to text number 20. The goddess of fortune, Lakshmi, the dust of whose feet is worn on the head by others, waits upon you as appointed, for she is anxious to secure a place in the abode of the king of bees, who hovers on the fresh wreath of tulsi leaves offered at your feet by some blessed devotees. So here some very important points are there. Tulsi, actually, as you all may be knowing, has got a very high position, and Tulsi Devi has got this position due to its being placed always at the lotus feet of the Lord. If you have seen in the temples also, the Tulsi is offered at the lotus feet of the Lord. Just like the bees, they hover around the Tulsi leaves. Similarly, Lakshmi Devi, who is the goddess of fortune, who is sought after the Brahmanas, devotees, demigods, Vaishnavas, everyone else, she is always engaged in rendering service to the lotus feet of the Lord. That means the point is that no one can be a benefactor of the Lord. Everyone is actually a servant of the Lord. So in this context, there is a very nice quote from Chaitanya Charitamrita, which says, Naham Vipro na Chanapati, Napi Vaishyo na Sudro, Naham Banin Sakra, na Chakrapati, no Vanasto Yaterva, Kintu Prudyan Nikila Parmanda Purnamuta, there Gopi Pattupadagamayo, Das Dasan Dasa. That means, translation is, I'm not a Brahmana, I'm not a Kshatriya, I'm not a Vaishya, and I'm not a Shudra, nor am I a Brahmachari, a householder, a Vanaprastha, or a sannyasi. I identify myself only as a servant of the servant of the servant of the lotus feet of Lord Shri Krishna, the maintainer of the gopis. He is like an ocean of nectar, and he is the cause of the universal transcendental bliss. He is always existing with brilliance. That the important meaning conclusion from this particular sloka is that generally we tend to claim ourselves as Brahmanas or Kshatriyas or Vaishyas or Shudras, whatever it may be. But ultimately, there is only one designation for us, and that is that we are all servant of the servant of the servant of the lotus feet of the Lord. This is the ultimate conclusion. Then we go to text number 21. Here, yes. Translation says, O Lord, you are exceedingly attached to the activities of your pure devotees, yet you are never attached to the goddess of fortune, who constantly engage in your transcendental loving service. How can you be purified, therefore, by the dust of the path traversed by the Brahmanas And how can be glorified or made fortunate by the marks of Srivatsa on your chest? Here in this look, there are many important points. We'll discuss these one by one. Now here, the Lord is served by many pure devotees and or many goddesses of fortune also. In this respect, there is a very nice prayer given by Lord Brahma to the Supreme Lord, in which in Brahma Samhita he prays. He says, Chintamani Prakarasatma Suvalpa Viksha Lakshab Deshi Saradir Abhipalayantam Lakshmi Shahasya Sambhara Sevyamanam Govindamadi Purusham Tamham Bhajan. And the translation for this is that the Lord is always served by many hundreds and thousands of goddesses of fortune in his Vaikuntha planet. But yet, because of his attitude of renunciation of all opulences, he is not attached to any one of them. Because one of the Lord's opulence is renunciation. So, actually, we generally think there is one Lakshmi, but there are hundreds and thousands of Lakshmis who are serving the Lord in his Vaikuntha planets. And still, the Lord is not attached to even one of them, because one of the opulence is that the Lord is complete renunciation. So there is some important points here. The Lord has many opulences which are unlimited, but still they are categorized into six. That is, he's got unlimited wealth, he's got unlimited fame, unlimited strength, unlimited beauty, unlimited knowledge, and unlimited renunciation also. So one of the names of the Lord is called Bhagavan. That means one who has this opulence is called Bhagavan. So the Lord has got unlimited in these categories. And the next important point is that all the demigods, another living entities, they worship Lakshmi Devi, the goddess of fortune, because they want to get some favor. Generally, if you see, people want to worship Lakshmi Devi to get some Lakshmi. But that Lakshmi Devi is always engaged in the service of the Lord by means of devotion service. But in spite of being served by so many Lakshmis, the Lord is not attached to her, because he can create unlimited numbers of such goddess of fortune by his own opulence. So that is why the Lord is not attached to any one of them. Now, these goddesses of fortune, it is said, sometimes become envious of the tulsi leaves which are placed at the lotus feet of the Lord. The reason is, tulsi leaves are always placed at the lotus feet of the Lord, and they are always fixed and they do not move from there generally. Whereas Lakshmi Devi, what happens is that though she is placed in the chest of the Lord, she has to please her devotees also. So she get her to there are many devotees who ask for her favor. So for that, so Lakshmi Devi sometimes goes to satisfy her devotees, but Tulsi does not ever leave her position from the lotus feet of the Lord. That is one of the reasons Lakshmi Devi is called Chanchala. Chanchala means she is not fixed in one place. But Tulsi never leave that position from the lotus feet of the Lord. Therefore, the Lord appreciates the service of Tulsi Devi more than that of the goddess of fortune, that is Lakshmi. Another important point is that the Lord is not dependent on anyone's mercy for his opulence. He is fully self-sufficient. The Lord's statement is that his opulence is due to the benediction of the Brahmanas and Vaishnavas. Now we see here that the Lord says that all his opulence is due to the benediction of the Brahmanas and Vaishnavas. But this is only to teach others that the Brahmanas and Vaishnavas should be respected in the society, because they are all devotees of the Lord. These are the important points here. Text number 22. This is an important sloka, so I'll read the sloka. Dharmasyate bhagavatasтрivrattibihi svai bhaktischaracharam idam vichadevatartham dunamritam tat abhigati rajastamascha satvena satveno vardaya tanuva nirasya. The translation says, O Lord, you are the personification of all religion. Therefore, you manifest yourself in 3 millenniums, and thus you protect this universe, which consists of animate and inanimate beings. by your grace, which is of pure goodness and is the bestower of all blessings, kindly drive away the elements of rajas and tamas for the sake of the demigods and twice born. So here, the sages are offering their prayers. And one important point that is mentioned in this sloka is their sages are addressing the Lord as Tri Yuga. Tri Yuga means we'll understand the definition from this. Now, Tri Yuga means it has got many meanings. We will discuss some of these here. Tri Yuga means one who appears in 3 millenniums of Tri Yuga, that is Satya Yuga, Dwapar Yuga, and Treta Yuga. Here, the Kali Yuga is not mentioned in this because it is described in the Shastras that in Kali Yuga, the Lord comes as a Channa Avatara or a covered incarnation. That means the Lord does not appear as a direct incarnation, but he appears as a covered incarnation. Therefore, he is addressed as Tri Yuga. That is one who appears in 3 yugas. Our Acharya, Sridhara Swami, he also describes that 3 yuga means couples. Three means 3. So 3 yuga means 3 couples. The Lord has, in the previous verse, I described as to how the Lord has got unlimited opulences. So there are 3 couples of opulences, that is knowledge, wealth, beauty, fame, power, and renunciation. So these are sort of segregated into 3 sets, that is 3 couples of opulences. So that can also be one word meaning for 3 yuga. Then there is another meaning. It says the Lord is the personality of religious principles. That is, in 3 millenniums, religious principles are protected by 3 kinds of spiritual culture, namely austerity, cleanliness, and mercy. And the Lord is called Tri Yuga in that way also. That means in each of these yugas, there are spiritual principles that protect the spiritual culture. That is mentioned here is austerity, cleanliness, and mercy. But the Lord is so merciful that he, even in this Kali Yuga, he comes as a covered incarnation as Lord Chaitanya and comes to protect the people of this age. But it's not a direct incarnation. He's Krishna himself, but he comes as a devotee of Krishna, not directly Krishna. So the devotees pray to Lord Chaitanya to eliminate their element of passion and ignorance from themselves, which are the normal assets that are seen in this age of Kali Yuga. That is, mostly people in this Kali Yuga are bestowed with most of passion and ignorance. And this Kali Yuga, one can get rid of these passion and modes of passion and ignorance by chanting the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, that is Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So these 4 Kumaras were aware of their situation. Though they were great exalted devotees of the Lord, they considered themselves to be situated in the modes of passion and ignorance because though they were in Vaikuntha, they wanted to curse the devotees of the Lord. So they considered that this was a weakness in them. Generally, devotees of the Lord don't consider themselves as exalted personalities, but they also consider themselves to be weak. And so here they pray to the Lord to remove their passion and ignorance. So these 3 qualifications, that is cleanliness, austerity, and mercy, are the qualifications of twice born and the demigod. That means those who are situated in the, at least in the mode of goodness, that is the Brahmanas and Kshatriyas, they should be free from the mode of passion and ignorance. Now, those who are not situated in the quality of goodness, they accept these 3 principles of spiritual culture. But for in the Krishna conscious movement, these 3 sinful activities which are prohibited, namely illicit sex, intoxication, and eating food other than Krishna prasada offered to Krishna, are nullified by these prohibitions, that is austerity, cleanliness, and mercy. Now, devotees are very, very merciful. So they spare even the poor animals, and they are clean because they are free of contamination from unwanted footsteps and unwanted habits also. So austerity is represented by restricted sex life. These principles indicated by the Kumaras should be followed by the devotees in general. I mean, devotees don't consider themselves to be great devout personalities, but they also consider that they also have some weaknesses. Then these are the different meanings of the Tri Yuga. Then we come text number 23. Here they say, "O Lord, you are the protector of the highest of the twice born. If you do not protect them by offering worship and mild words, then certainly the auspicious path of worship will be rejected by people in general who act on the strength and authority of your lordships." So here in this sloka, the Lord says in chapter 3, Bhagavad Gita, text 21. The Vedic injunction is that one cannot understand this absolute truth by mental speculation or logical argument. One has to follow the authorities. In this respect, there is a quote in Chaitanya Charitamrita. It says, Mahajana enagata sapantaha. That means dry arguments. Many times people tend to argue within themselves. They are inconclusive. At the same time, one whose opinion, a great personality is one whose opinion does not differ from others is considered a great sage. So simply by studying the Vedas is not enough, but one has to understand the Vedic principles as followed by the great Mahajanas or the authorities like uh, uh, who are there in each of the sampradayas. So that is how Vedic science can be understood. One cannot at the same time sit in the house and say that I am studying Bhagavad Gita and at home. But no, that is not possible. One has to understand from those who follow this science and those who understand the science. That is why it is called Mahajagana, Mahajano Enagatasa Panta. That means great authority should be followed. Otherwise, if we simply depend on scriptures, sometimes we may be misled by others. Or there may be many spiritual injunctions which we cannot understand. That's why authorities are required. So the four Brahmana sages stated that Krishna is naturally the protector of the cows and Brahmanas. There is also a very nice sloka. It says, Jagat Go Brahmana Hitaya Jagatitaya Krishna Govindaya Namo Namaha. That means the Lord is very dear to the cows and the Brahmanas. And when the Lord was here in this planet himself, he set as a perfect example as a cowherd boy. He was the cow, and though he was a cowherd boy, he was still the supreme Lord. But at the same time, the cows were dear to him, the cows and calves, and he was very respectful to the Brahmanas and the devotees also. It's also said in the Shastra that the Brahmanas are the best of the twice born. Brahmanas mean those who are devotees of the Lord, not just those who consider themselves to be born as Brahmanas, but those who are twice born. That is, Brahmana, out of all these, the Brahmanas are the best. So normally, what happens when there is a fight between two persons? Each of them try to protect the upper part of the body, that is the head. So the Brahmanas are compared to the head of the body, Kshatriyas to the arms, the Vaishyas to the belly, and so forth. Similarly, for advancement of human civilization, the best of the body, social body, are the Brahmanas, then the Kshatriyas and the Vaishyas. So protection should be given to all, but it does not mean the Shudras are to be neglected. Everyone is to be protected, but priority should be given to the protection of the Brahmanas and Vaishnavas. And it is said in Shastra that even if one is not able to offer anything for protection of these Brahmanas and higher orders in the society, one can at least use sweet words to pacify them. So the Lord personally exhibited this behavior to the Kumaras also. And there are so many examples in Srimad Bhagavatam in this respect. Then it's also said that the Brahmanas are the yeah. When their protection is performed, then the Lord becomes very pleased. It is just like worshipping the Lord himself. Then we go to text number 24. It says, Dear Lord, you never want the auspicious path to be destroyed, for you are the reservoir of all goodness. Just to benefit people in general, you destroy the evil element by your mighty potency. You are the proprietor of the three creations. and the maintainer of the entire universe. Therefore, your potency is not reduced by your submissive behavior. Rather, by submission, you exhibit your wonderful transcendental pastimes. So here we understand that the Lord Krishna's position is not reduced by taking up the position as a cowherd boy or by giving respect to Brahmanas like Sudama Brahmana, etc., or his other devotees, Nanda Maharaj, Vasudeva, Maharaj Yudhishthira, and the Pandavas. That means the Lord is the supreme personality of Godhead. At any cost, even though he takes the position of a cowherd boy, or he may even offer respect to the Pandavas or Nanda Maharaj, etc. The Lord is Satchidananda Vigraha, as mentioned Brahma Samhita also. His form is completely spiritual, full of transcendental knowledge, bliss, and spiritual in nature. It is eternal. And because the living entities mean the soul within us, which is also a part and parcel of the Supreme Lord, they also have the same category of Satchidananda. They also are eternal, blissful, and are full of knowledge. But when they come to this material world, they are covered by this material energy called Maya. And because of which the original constitutional position is covered. So we should try to understand this appearance of Lord Krishna in this spirit. So that is why the Kumaras are praying to the Lord in this respect. Even though he is a cowherd boy, the Lord is also the eternal uh, prince of Dwarka, and at the same time, he is also the lover of the Brajavasis. And all his appearances are meaningful because they show his real characteristics to the conditioned souls who have forgotten their relationship with the Lord. And he does everything for their benefit. That means whatever the Lord exhibits, he is there as a leader in the Kurukshetra war. So he exhibits his opulence there. He is there as a dear friend to all the Vrajavasis. He exhibits his qualities there. So different qualities are exhibited to different devotees of the Lord. Then we come to text number 25, in which they say, "O Lord, whatever punishment you wish to award to these two innocent persons, or also to us, we shall accept without duplicity." We understand that we have cursed these two faultless persons. So, as you all know from the previous slokas, which were discussed in the previous time by previous speaker, these four sages cursed the two doorkeepers called Jaya and Vijaya because the Kumaras were not allowed entry. So now at this point, they pray to the Lord that whatever punishment that Lord is they have cursed and the Lord is going to award them, it may be given to them also. Why? Because they are repentant. They are conscious that they have cursed them, and now they want to engage themselves in the service of the Lord. They say that those who are engaged in the service of the Lord cannot be at fault at any stage. It is said that anyone who is a devotee of the Lord automatically regrets or becomes repentant. So here in this verse, they say, whatever punishment you wish to award those two innocent persons, or also to accept to us, we shall accept without duplicity. And it's also mentioned that anyone who has faith in the service of the Lord or actually engages in the transcendent service of the Lord has got all the good qualities of the demigods. In this respect, there is a quote from Srimad Bhagavatam, 5th Canto, which says that all the demigods and their exalted qualities such as religion, knowledge, and renunciation become manifest in the body of one who has developed unalloyed devotion for the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Vasudeva. On the other hand, a person devoid of devotional service and engaged in material qualities has no good qualities. Even if he is adept at the practice of mystic yoga or honest endeavor of maintaining his family and relatives, he must be driven by his mental speculations and must engage in the service of the Lord's external energy. How can there be any good qualities in such a man? That means one who performs devotional service, he gets all the good qualities that are manifest in the demigods. But on the other hand, one who does not perform devotional service to the Lord, what good it is if he's just maintaining his family, he does not manifest these qualities. Therefore, it is said that a devotee cannot be at fault. Sometimes it is found that by accident or by some temporary arrangement, a devotee might look like having fall down, but that should not be taken very seriously. So in this example, the cursing of this Jaya and Vijaya, the doorkeepers, is hereby repented by the Kumaras. So the Kumaras are thinking in terms of their position in the modes of passion and ignorance, and they are prepared to accept any kind of punishment from the Lord for them also. So, in other words, the Kumaras having cursed the two Brahmana, the two doorkeepers, now they are feeling repentant for having cursed them. They feel that they are also situated in the mode of passion and ignorance, because only in the mode of passion and ignorance one expresses their anger. So they are also prepared to accept any punishment that the Lord may give them. So this is the great position of the devotees of the Lord. They feel that they have done something wrong and they are repentant on that. So, but the other conclusion is also that in general, when dealing with devotees, one should not try to find faults. Nobody is completely perfect in the material world. So sometimes there can be accident until fall down, but one should not try to find fault with them. In the Bhagavad Gita also it is said that a devotee who faithfully serves the Supreme Lord, even if he found to commit a great mistake, should be still considered a sadhu or a saintly person because he is situated in the service of the Lord. Due to former habits, he may commit sometimes some wrong, but because he is engaged in the service of the Lord, that wrong should not be taken very seriously. So sometimes we all are conditioned by our previous nature. Sometimes he might commit some mistakes, but one who is situated firmly in the service of the Lord, his fault should not be considered very seriously. Then in sloka number 26, in return, so far the sages glorified the Lord by offering wonderful prayers. Now in sloka number 26, the Lord is replying to the Kumaras. The Lord replied, O Brahmanas, know that the punishment you inflicted on them was originally ordained by me, and therefore they will fall to a birth in a demoniac family. But they will be firmly united with me in thought through mental concentration intensified by anger, and they will return to my presence shortly. So here the Lord is replying the Brahmanas, saying that this punishment which was inflicted by the sages upon the doorkeepers Jaya and Vijaya was ordained, was this plan was conceived by the Lord Himself. Now, without the Lord's sanction, nothing can happen. That means these sages, the Kumaras' cursing of the doorkeepers, was done perfectly by the sanction of the Lord Himself. It is said that uh, this reason for this sanction is explained here. Sometimes the Lord also desires to fight. The fighting spirit also exists in the Lord. Because this quality exists in the Lord, the living entities also have a small fragmental quality of the tendency to fight. So the Lord is the source of everything, and this fighting spirit and anger is also present in the Lord. So when the Lord desires to utilize his quality, that is, when he desires to fight with someone, he has to find an enemy. But in the Vaikuntha planets, there is no enemy for the Lord because all are devotees of the Lord. And he has therefore to fight or to exhibit his fighting spirit, he has to come to the material world and take an incarnation to manifest his fighting spirit. So when he comes to the material world, the Lord cannot fight with every conditioned soul like you and me. So the Lord has to fight along with his devotee only. So sometimes the Lord arranges for devotees to come to this material world to perform his pastimes. So he has to find a devotee who will play the part of an enemy. So that's how these Jaya and Vijaya were selected by the Lord because they had an inner desire to satisfy the Lord in fulfilling the Lord's desire. So that is how the sages came there to see the Lord, and accidentally the doorkeepers were cursed. So it was the Lord's desire to send them to the material world, not perpetually, but for a very short time, for some time. So therefore, the example is given just in a theater. Someone takes the position of a proprietor. Someone takes the position of an enemy. And after the play is over, each one go are respective back to their respective positions. So devotees were, in this case, the devotees were cursed by the sages to go to the Asura Jana and or atheistic families. A devotee should come into an atheistic family may be sometimes surprising, but it is simply a show. So it is mentioned that after finishing their mock fighting, both the devotee and the Lord are again associated in the spiritual planets. That is the conclusion. The conclusion is that no one falls from the spiritual world or from the Vaikuntha planets because it's an eternal abode. But sometimes, as the Lord desires, devotees come into this material world as preachers or atheists in some cases, but in every case it must be accepted. It's a plan of the Lord Himself. So the Lord has a plan for everyone, for everything, and nothing can go against the will of the Lord. And one of the qualities or one of the divisions of surrender is that a devotee accepts that the Lord is the ultimate proprietor and He is the ultimate guardian of all. In that mode, a devotee is surrendered. So the devotees are never separated from the Lord. They are always with the Lord, either in union or in separation. Sometimes the devotee might feel in union with the Lord, and sometimes the devotee may feel in separation. That separation is all to increase the mood of union with the Lord. So the devotees have this firm conviction that they are always protected by the Lord. Now, in this respect, there is a quote in the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu that there is a lot relishes lot of rasas with his, or mellows with the devotees. And one of the rasas is chivalry. And the Lord enjoys these rasas. The fighting spirit also is there within the Supreme Lord. Otherwise, how can this be manifest in others? So there are some examples in the Bhakti Rasam Sindhu which says that Krishna and his dear friend Sridama, they are very intimate friends, but out of anger, yet Sridama would always challenge Krishna. And when both of them begin to fight, all the other friends in the bank of Yamuna River would see that wonderful fighting between the two friends. And they used to prepare some mock arrow, some arrows for mock fighting. So not the real arrow, they would prepare some arrows for mock fighting. And then Krishna will throw his arrows at Sridama, and Sridama will also throw his arrows at the Lord. And this way, Krishna was very, very satisfied with the type of mock fighting. Similarly, there is an example given that Arjuna and Krishna would fight in the presence of Kunti Devi, and Arjuna would be defeated by Krishna. These are all pastimes that are there. One time, a devotee of the Lord, Krishna addressed, he says, my dear Damodar, the devotee of the Lord told Krishna, my dear friend Damodar, Damodar is one of the names of Lord Krishna. You are an expert only in eating. You have defeated Subala, another devotee, only because he is weak and you have adopted cheating means. Don't advertise yourself as a great fighter by such action. You have advertised yourself as a serpent, but I am the peacock who will not defeat you. So peacock is the enemy of the serpent. So here, this is how Krishna and his devotees, they chastise within themselves and they fight within themselves. So in all these chivalrous activities, only Krishna's friends can become the opponents. Krishna's enemies are actually not his opponents. They are all friends in devotional service in chivalrous mode. That's why it's called chivalrous rasa. Then text number 27. So thereafter, Lord Brahma told the demigods, after seeing the Lord of Vaikuntha, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, in the self-illuminated Vaikuntha planet, the sages left that transcendental abode. So this transcendental abode of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, that the spiritual planets, it is mentioned that they are all self-illuminated. Just like, for example, in this world, we see the sun, the moon, so many stars, etc. But in the spiritual world, all the planets are self-illuminated. They are self-sufficient and they are independent also. Also, there is a mention in this sloka that once who goes to the spiritual planets never comes back to this material world. The inhabitants of Vaikuntha never come to this material world. But the incident of Jaya and Vijaya coming back here is a different case. They came to the material world for some time, and after playing their pastimes, they went back to Vaikuntha. Text number 28. The sages circumambulated the Supreme Lord, offered their obeisances, and returned extremely delighted at the learning of the divine opulence of the Vaishnava. So, the Kumaras then circumambulated the Lord, and then they offered their obeisances and returned back. So, importance of circumambulation is mentioned also in the Shastras. It's very respectful practice even today to circumambulate the Lord in the Hindu temples, especially in Vaishnava temple. There is always an arrangement for people to offer their respects to the deity and circumambulate at least 3 times. So there are 64 principles of devotional service in the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, of which one is circumambulation. So it says that one must circumambulate the temple building at least 3 times. So in every temple, there is an arrangement for everyone to circumambulate. So sometimes devotees go around more than 3 times, 10 times, 15 times, according to their vows. But generally, it is good to circumambulate the temples at least 3 times. There is also a quote that's saying that a person who is circumambulating the deity of Vishnu can counteract the circumambulation of repeated birth and death in this material world. That means all the conditioned souls like us, we continue the process of cycle of birth and death. And one who circumambulates the temple of the Lord Vishnu, he becomes free from the cycle of birth and death. This is an important quote from the Shastras. In text number 29, the Lord then said to his attendants, Jaya and Vijaya, depart this place, but fear not. All glories unto you. Though I am capable of nullifying the Brahmana's curse, I would not do so. On the contrary, it has my approval. So there are some very important points here. So whatever incidents that took place had the approval of the Lord. Actually, there is no possibility for the sages to become so angry with the doorkeepers, nor could the Supreme Lord neglect his doorkeepers, nor can one come back from Vaikuntha planet after taking birth there. So the 3 important points here. The sages got angry on the doorkeepers. The Lord also cannot neglect his devotees who are the doorkeepers. And also, one who is there in the Vaikuntha planets does not come back to this material world. So here it is said that all these were done by the approval of the Lord himself. They had the Lord's approval. Otherwise, it could not have happened. Just by some cursing of a Brahmana, they did not have to come back here. The Lord actually in this verse blesses the so-called culprits. The Lord is actually glorifying, saying that all glories unto you. A devotee also, once accepted by the Lord, can never fall down. This is the conclusion of this incident. In text number 30, it says that this departure from Vaikuntha was foretold by Lakshmi, the goddess of fortune. She was very angry because when she left my abode and then returned, you stopped her at the gate while I was sleeping. So there is another pastime that has happened. That pastime is like once Lakshmi Devi left the palace, and when she came back, the same doorkeepers, the Jaya and Vijaya, they stopped her from entering, saying that the Lord was sleeping. So Lakshmi Devi was also angry because they did not permit her to enter the palace. So she also stopped them. They stopped her and she was angry at them. This is also a small pastime for which they had to come here. So if you see all these pastimes, the Kumaras getting angry, the Jaya Vijaya not to come to this material world, they come. Then Lakshmi Devi getting angry for not being permitted. All these are planned, arranged by the Lord to teach some lessons. We'll come to this at the conclusion of these slokas. So text number 31. The Lord assured the 2 Vaikuntha inhabitants Jaya and Vijaya, by practicing the mystic yoga system in anger, you will be cleaned of the sin of disobeying the Brahmanas and within a very short time return to me. So the Supreme Personality of Godhead advised the two doorkeepers, Jaya and Vijaya, that by dint of bhakti yoga in anger, they would be delivered from the curses of the Brahmana. So they were cursed by the four Kumaras, but by expressing this devotional service in anger, they would come back to the spiritual world. So there is a quote that one can practice bhakti yoga in anger also, and one can become free from sinful reactions. Even a Brahma Shapa or a curse by a Brahmana, which cannot be overcome by other means, can be overcome by bhakti yoga. So bhakti yoga is very, very powerful, by which one can overcome a curse also. And one can practice this bhakti yoga in many rasas. There are many mellows, but we'll go to the principal ones. Principal ones. There are 12 rasas, 5 primary and 7 secondary. The 5 primary rasas are Shanta rasa, Dasya rasa, Shakya rasa, Vatsalya rasa, and Shanta, Dasya, Shakya, Vatsalya, and Madhurya. So these are 5 principal rasas, and there are 7 secondary rasas. And one of the secondary rasas is the chivalry rasa. Now, the gopis were attracted to Krishna by bhakti yoga in a relationship of lusty desire. Similarly, Kamsa was attached to bhakti yoga by dint of fear. Kamsa was always fearful of Krishna, and sometimes even one becomes an enemy of the Lord by thinking of the Lord all the time as an enemy. So devotees of the Lord are called demigods, and whereas non-devotees are called asuras. But bhakti yoga is so powerful that even when demigods and asuras can get the benefits of thinking of the personality of Godhead. The basic principle of bhakti yoga is to always think of the Supreme Lord. That's why the Lord says in Bhagavad Gita, Manmana Bhavaman Bhakto Madhyadi Namaskuru. Always think of me. Now, in the material planets, there are different grades of sinful activities, of which disrespecting a Brahmana or a Vaishnava is the most sinful. So here it is said that one can overcome even that grave sin by simply thinking of Vishnu, not even favorably, but in anger. So one can even overcome the sin of finding fault, but it should not be done with an intention. But one can overcome that by thinking of Lord Krishna in anger. The point is that in this age of Kali, the easy method of delivery is chanting the Mahamantra. But if even one thinks of Krishna as an enemy, that particular qualification of thinking of Krishna cleanses one of all sins. But that does not mean that on the strength of that, one continues to commit the same offense. Text 32. After thus speaking at the door of Vaikuntha, the Lord returned to his abode, where there are many celestial airplanes and all surpassing wealth and purport, wealth and splendor. So from this, it is clearly clear that this incident took place at the entrance of Vaikuntha. That means actually this incident did not take place in Vaikuntha planet, but it happened at the entrance of Vaikuntha. That is how the sages also were not actually within Vaikuntha, and they were at the gate. That's why it is said that how could they return to the material world if they returned to Vaikuntha? But actually they did not enter, so therefore they returned. There are many incidents like these in Shastras which are mentioned. For example, the second canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, we see that Dhruva Muni went and came back, but he did not enter Vaikuntha Loka, but he was there at the entrance itself. So the Vedic Shastras say that Om Tat Vishnu Paramam Padam. The goal of life is to understand Vishnu. Bhagavatam also confirms this. Text number 33. But these two gatekeepers, the best of the demigods, their beauty and luster diminished by the curse of the Brahmanas, became morose and fell from Vaikuntha, the abode of Supreme Lord. There is no purport here. Text number 34. Then as Jaya and Vijaya fell from the Lord's abode, a great roar of disappointment arose from all the demigods who were sitting in their splendid airplanes. Here also. So the demigods, when they heard that these great personalities have appeared as Jaya and Vijaya, the demigods were all were all in disappointment. Text number 35. Lord Brahma then continues. Lord Brahma continued that those two principal doorkeys of the personality of Godhead have now entered the womb of Diti, the powerful semen of Kashyapa Muni, having covered them. So it is said that the living entity takes shelter within the semen of a father, which is injected within the womb of a mother. And with the help of a mother's emulsified ovum, the living entity grows a particular type of body. So, in this connection, it is said that the mind of Kashyapa Muni was not in order when he conceived his two sons. That means they conceived. That's why Yeshua also had mentioned there is something called Garbhadan Samskara, which is required to have a proper mindset to conceive. So when Kashyapa Muni conceived these two sons, Hiranyakashipu and Hiranyakaksha, his mind was not in proper order. Therefore, the semen he discharged was simultaneously extremely powerful and mixed with the quality of anger. Therefore, it is concluded that while conceiving a child, one's mind must be very sober and devotional. That is why the Garbhadana Sarka Samskara is recommended in the Vedic scriptures. If the mind of the father is not sober, the semen discharge will not be very good. The living entity wrapped in the matter produced from the father and mother will be demoniac, like Hiranyaksha and Hiranyakashipu. Therefore, the conditions of the conception are to be carefully studied. This is a great science. So, therefore, it is important to have a proper status of mind at the time of union. As you all know, that this particular was discussed before. So, the mind of Kashyapa Muni and Diti were not in proper order. That's why the two demons were born. Text number 36. It is the prowess of these two asuras that has disturbed you, for it has minimized your power. There is no remedy within my power, however, for it is the Lord Himself who desires to do all this. So actually, Hiranyaksha and Hiranyakashipu were formerly Jaya and Vijaya. They became asuras, and the demigods of this material world could not control them. Therefore, Lord Brahma is telling that neither he nor the demigods could counteract the disturbance they created. So, there is only one supreme controller, that is the Supreme Lord, who can control everyone. In this case, Lord Brahma is admitting that even he cannot control these two doorkeepers, Jaya and Vijaya, who appear in the material world. And the Lord alone can counteract them. And further it is mentioned that the Lord is the original in everything, and when he decides to fight, he must fight with a devotee. Therefore, by his desire only, Jaya and Vijaya were cursed by the Kumaras. And the Lord ordered the gatekeepers to go down to the material world to become his enemies so that he could fight with them. And his fighting desires could be satisfied by the service of his personal devotees. So Brahma showed the demigod that this situation of darkness was created by them, by which they were disturbed. And that was also a desire of the Supreme Lord. And the Lord wanted to show also that these two attendants were coming in the form of demons, and they were very powerful, greater than even the demigods who could not control them. So no one can surpass the acts of the Supreme Lord. This is one lesson. So the demigods were also advised not to counteract this incident because it was ordained by the Lord Himself. Similarly, anyone who is ordered by the Lord to perform such action in the material world, especially preaching His glories, cannot be counteracted by anyone. The will of the Lord is executed under all circumstances. So many times preachers also come to this material world, like Sri Haridas Thakura, Jesus Christ. So they all underwent a lot of austerity. They all come under the instruction of the Lord by partly executing the mission of the Lord. That's why it is mentioned that the will of the Lord is executed under all circumstances. And then in text number 37, he says, My dear sons, the Lord is the controller of the three modes of nature and is responsible for the creation, preservation, and dissolution of the universe. His wonderful creative power, Yogamaya, cannot be easily understood even by the masters of yoga. That most ancient person, the personality of Godhead, will alone come to our rescue. What purpose can we serve on his behalf by deliberating on the subject? So here are some very important points. When something is arranged by the personality of Godhead, one should not be disturbed by it, even if if it appears to be a reversal according to one's calculations. So many times when one is rendering devotion service to the Lord, one might experience a lot of reversals, but one should not be disturbed by it because we might calculate it as a reversal in our life, but it all happens by the will of the Lord. Many times example is given. Sometimes we see that a powerful preacher is killed, or sometimes is put into difficulty, just as Haridas Thakura was. Haridas Thakura was a great difficulty, was a great devotee of the Lord, and he came to this material world to execute the will of the Lord by preaching the Lord's glories. But Haridasa was punished in 22 marketplaces by Kazi, by the men of Kazi who beat him in these places. Similarly, another example that is given is that Jesus Christ was crucified. He came to execute the will of the Lord. And another example that is given is Prahlad Maharaja. He was put into so much of tribulation by his own father, but that was also an arrangement by the will of the Lord. The Pandavas, they were all direct friends of Krishna, and they lost their kingdom. Their wife was insulted. They had to undergo a lot of severe tribulation in the forest, etc. But seeing all these reverses, uh, devotees should not be affected. One should not be disturbed. Rather, one should simply understand that in these matters, there must be some plan of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The Bhagavatam's conclusion is that a devotee is never disturbed by such reverses. He accepts even reverse conditions as the grace of the Lord. One who continues to serve the Lord even in reverse condition is assured that he will go back to Godhead, back to Vaikuntha planets. That means even in the process of rendering devotional service, one will continue to see reversals. But in spite of that, one should not feel disturbed. Rather, one should continue to execute this devotional service without disturbance. And such souls are assured to go back to Godhead, to back to Vaikuntha planets. So there is some conclusion also here also. Now, it was the Lord's desire to send them to the material world, not perpetually, but for some time. Example is given that just as in a drama or in a cinema, there is no enmity between actors. Some play the role of a friend and someone as an enemy, but actually there is no enmity between them. So we see sometimes in a drama or cinema, what happens is that some actors play the role of an actor, some play the role of a villain. Actually, there is no enmity, but in that cinema or a drama, we might find them playing different roles. And after the drama is enacted, they are all friends as usual. So similarly, the Lord arranged for the doorkeeper to come to this material world and take birth as demons and fight with him. So just after a show is over, they all go back to their respective homes. The Lord and the devotees go back to the spiritual world. So many times the Lord sends his devotees from the spiritual world and they come to assist the Lord in performance of these pastimes. And sometimes they come as preachers, sometimes they come as demons to fight with the Lord. But after the pastime is over, they all go back to the spiritual world. And in the process of these manifest pastime, they teach a lot of lessons to conditioned souls like us, which will come down. The conclusion is that no one falls from the spiritual world, but they come for some time to help the Lord in the drama or play. So this was like a drama that was enacted by the Lord in this pastime with Jaya and Vijaya. Now there are some lessons that we will take from this, which I will take for the next few minutes also. So these are the lessons. As long as we are fixed in our devotional service, we don't have to worry about fall down. Even if it is to happen by the will of the Lord, it is like a drama for us to learn lessons. So as long as we are firmly fixed in our devotional service, one should not be worried about fall down from this material world, from the spiritual world. And even if one has to fall down, it is an arrangement of the Lord because the Lord either wants to correct something in us, or the Lord wants to teach us a lesson, or the Lord wants to teach lesson to the other conditioned souls like us. Like in this particular pastime, I mentioned how Lakshmi Devi was angry with the doormen. The Kumaras, who are all devotees of the Lord, who are all normally supposed to be very great sages, great devotees, they are not supposed to be getting angry. they got angry, they cursed the doorkeepers, and the doorkeepers don't come to the material world, but they had a desire to fulfill the one of the Lord's rasa of fighting spirit, because the Lord had the desire to fight, and no one else can come to this material world except a devotee, and then the Lord shows as he's fighting with them. So this is how a devotee always should look at every thing that happens in this life, every reversal also. You should not look at it as a reversal, but as a plan of the Lord. Another important, very vital, important point is that just because I am practicing devotional service, I cannot do whatever I want. Otherwise, it will lead to fall down. Because, like I mentioned previously, just because I am executing devotional service to the Lord, one should not take it for granted that they can commit offenses. Like, for example, again and again, like even in the chanting of the holy name of the Lord, many can offenses or these things can be counteracted by chanting the holy name of the Lord. But one should not think that because I am chanting the holy name of the Lord, I can continue to commit offenses. Similarly, one should not think that I am performing devotional service, so I can do whatever they want. Otherwise, it can lead to fall down. This is one example, one lesson. Another thing is that once we fall into a swimming pool and we don't know swimming, next time we have to be we'll be very, very careful while passing by a swimming pool. So this example is given that once we fall into a swimming pool, we don't know swimming. Then somebody has to come and rescue us from the drowning, from drowning. So next time, what happens is that a sensible or an intelligent person is one who thinks, "Oh, I've already fallen once. I should not fall again." So one is careful of a swimming pool. So similarly, when one commits a mistake, whether it's an offense or a sin, immediately one becomes repentant. So here we see the Kumaras were also repentant because they were great devotees of the Lord. They felt repentant for cursing the doorkeeper. So a devotee is one who realizes, I have made a mistake, I should not do it again. Another important point is that when the Lord arranges a pastime in the material world for which you have to come, He also arranges for your safe passage to the spiritual world. It will not be like any other conditioned soul. So when the Lord sends someone from the spiritual world to the material world for a particular pastime, the Lord also ensures a safe passage back to the spiritual world. It will not be like any conditioned soul going to spiritual world. A conditioned soul has to be completely refined, purified of his contamination, be firmly fixed in devotional service before he goes back to the spiritual world. But when someone comes to from the spiritual world to the material world, he is already a liberated soul. He performs this pastime, and then the Lord facilitates his passage to the spiritual world very easily. So one lesson that is given is that it is not just enough to know swimming, but also one should know how to rescue others from drowning. So it is not that if you will make a mistake, but then next time we have to be very careful to avoid such a repetition of such mistakes. Another important lesson is that association with devotees will ensure that you don't fall down. So when one is in constant association with devotees of the Lord, it will ensure that one does not fall down from his position because one is always protected under that association. Also, don't give your heart to non-devotees if you are trying to associate with them. So many times it may happen that in the course of our execution of material duties, we may have to associate with non-devotees. For example, those who are working, particularly men in the material world, nowadays women are also working with so many different types of occupations, during the course of which one might come across very non-devotees. So you can't live in this material world without working with them because they're all there. But the important point is that one should not give one's heart to such non-devotees, even if you are trying to associate with them. So one should not uh, try to take their qualities. Rather, one should try to give one's godly qualities to such non-devotees also, by which they become divine. They also get these divine qualities and they also become devotees of the Lord. The Lord Himself says in Bhagavad Gita, no one is more dear to me than who preach the, the glories of Gita to the others. So when we preach the message of the Lord to others, the Lord becomes very, very pleased when they also become devotees of the Lord. So there are two classifications, there are two types of lessons from this Jaya and Vijaya fall down. Internally, the Lord is seeking a wrestler to be like a paid actor. See, paid actors, what they do, they take some remuneration. Here, of course, the Lord does not take a remuneration. The Lord sends his associates to have this wrestling pastime. This is the internal reason. And the external conclusion of this pastime is that we must not offend great Vaishnavas. So there's a tendency that when one becomes, tends to practice devotional service, to commit offenses under the Vaishnavas. But all of them who are practicing devotional service are all devotees of the Lord. One should not try to offend these great Vaishnavas. So these are two. Internally, the Lord wanted to perform his pastime, and the external reason is that one must not offend the Vaishnavas. So these are the sum and substance or the conclusions of this particular pastime of the Lord as Varahadeva. And some important points that we discussed in the last two slokas. With this, I conclude the class for this session. For the next 2 minutes, I can take some questions or some comments that any of you may be having.